Hi guys, welcome once again to the Raj Kaul Podcast, and I've got a very special guest today, whose music I've been listening to recently. My wife actually introduced me to him, but I'm going to let him do his own introduction. So, Divine, take it away.
Hey Raj, thanks for having me. Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Sodhivine, also known as Naanak Sodhi. I'm a music producer and composer based in Canada, and I have been creating Punjabi fusion music for the last 4 or 5 years. Before that, I used to write music for films, which was not Punjabi fusion, just standard score. And I've written music for television. I've played at multiple music festivals, just all around a music guy, and happy to be here, chat music.
Absolutely. Interestingly, though, you also work for Google as well, don't you?
Yeah, I do,
Which is
I
like,
do, I do.
yeah, and you've got a
Yeah, so I'm
degree in mechanical engineering, is it?
that's right. I do have a degree in engineering, mechanical engineering. Yeah, I have an alter ego, which is my uh engineering slash tech Nanak, and then the music Nanak. And what I found is, as I'm getting older, there's so much overlap between the two skill sets.
Yeah.
Because my role at Google, I'm a product manager. I'm head of product for reCAPTCHA, which is like a cybersecurity feature, and I'm leading the team around the account protection side. I'm leading the product side for account protections, which is like making people's accounts safer. But there's so much around it that's, how do you take a feature to market? How do you get folks to use it? How do you explain it to folks? How do you make sure the product itself is good? And then when you look at music, it's the same thing. It's like, how do you get people to listen to your stuff? How do you get the word out there? How do you make sure the product is good? Like,
Mm.
very similar headspace, right? And so as I'm getting older and getting more years under my belt, I'm finding, oh yeah, like that's actually similar. We do like customer interviews, and yeah, like I do ask my listeners like, what do they think of this song or that song? So it's a lot of overlap.
That's really interesting. I work in IT as not mechanical engineering, but I work in IT. So we touch on cybersecurity quite a bit because we were going to
Oh
upload
yeah.
on your platform. So we do a lot of that. Yeah, it's really interesting that you said that, especially with the mechanical engineering. With what's your role at Google, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm a product manager.
Product manager, nice.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm head of product for reCAPTCHA account protections. So I'm looking at how to make everyone's accounts safer
Oh,
on the
nice.
web, essentially, and folks that use reCAPTCHA. And I'm sure you've heard of reCAPTCHA. It's like the bot detection.
Yeah,
Are
yeah,
you a
yeah, yeah. I've
robot or
seen that.
not?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So it's your fault,
So
is it? Those.
yeah, I'm the guy. I'm the guy that sends you that.
Yeah.
Like, where's the bicycle and the
Yeah,
and
exactly that. Yeah,
the
yeah. Viewers, Sodhivine's the guy who you want to blame for that. That's
yeah,
really
that's
cool,
yeah,
though. Great
just
dude.
email me
Yeah.
sodavine@gmail.com or whatever.
So tell me a bit about your background. Um, I know you worked as a screen composer, but tell me about your background. How did you get into music, firstly? Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I grew up in a pretty musical household. So my dad, he sang a lot of music at home. He did a lot of like music nights with his friends and our family
Really?
friends, and all come
What
over.
type of music was it?
So it was all Bollywood karaoke style music. So they would all just sing Bollywood music together. And every time we'd be going on a road trip, it'd always be like the cassettes with like, throwback songs, but then also some of the more recent songs. And like this is talking like the 90s, right? And so you'd have the one cassette with
Awesome
whatever,
era.
6 songs, 6 songs on one side. And it's like, okay, it's like how many times are we gonna listen to this? And you just as a kid, you just pick that stuff up, right? And my dad also had a for his I think it was my parents' like first marriage anniversary, or my dad's first birthday as a married couple. My mom bought him a Casio synth, like a small Casio keyboard, right? And that was kicking around the house. So growing up, I always had this like really advanced for its time, this like tone bank keyboard. And I would always just be like messing around and like trying all these different sounds that has all these like drum patterns and stuff. So at a very young age, I discovered that I liked that stuff. And going forward in middle school, I discovered GarageBand completely by fluke, to be honest. Because it was funny. Like I walked into, I signed up for a computers class because I was a little bit, into that stuff. And there were all these like black Dell monitors, like 100 of them in a classroom. And then there's this white, like cool looking Mac computer on the side that like nobody wanted to use. And I was like, well, these computers look kind of like chunky. That one looks like cool. Like it's like if you remember the Emacs, they're like all round and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I opened that up and I saw this like bouncing guitar on the bottom, which was like GarageBand. And I'm like, okay, what is this? I opened it up and like boom, there's all this music stuff, right? And at that time I had never like graduated from this keyboard. I had that musical direction in me, but I never really like got it out. And through GarageBand, I started to do that a little bit. And then that led to me, discovering music. Then I joined music in high school and, started making more beats on GarageBand and then moved over to Logic, which is basically GarageBand's bigger brother. And um, I started to find more friends that were into the creative side of things. So a few of my friends in high school, middle school, they were um, uh, they were filmmakers. So they were creating films. And we just kind of linked up and said, hey, like Naanak makes these beats and you guys make these little videos. Like, let's just put the beats in the back of the videos. Like pretty simple, straightforward. And that was how I started to write music for video. And then as we got older and older, we started doing proper short films.
Mhm.
That's how I started doing music for short films. Like we got like the drama kids involved and the English kids were like writing the thing. And then, I was doing the music and then my buddies were doing the filmmaking, editing.
You had a whole
And
production crew, didn't you?
yeah, it was a whole production crew of like folks that just were like throwing stuff against the wall, seeing what sticks. You're like 17, 16. Like you're not trying to like do it big time, right? You're
Yeah.
just like, hey, this is cool. Let's just see what happens. And yeah, like as we got older and older, we stuck around the city. Like we all went to the same university because I'm from Calgary, and so we went to the University of Calgary, and like we started creating these films, and lo and behold, like we did our first feature film when I was 21, 22, something like that. And I'm kind of one of the younger guys. The rest of the crew is a bit older. So we did a full feature-length film, went to the Calgary International Film Festival. That was really cool. Got to do like a whole red carpet and things. And um, keep in mind, we're still a bunch of kids just writing stuff for fun, right? We're
That's
not trying to
immense,
like
though. That is so cool.
there's no like production crew. There's nobody that
Yeah.
actually really knows the film industry, right? This is just like a bunch of folks that got together with like no budget, like stole our dad's video camera kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, like I'm like making stuff on like a old MacBook Pro or like a compact Presario on FL Studio. Like, so yeah, like very, very grassroots. Um, and then that's when after that happened, more folks started hitting me up like, hey, can you write music for my film or can you do this for this short film, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, okay, this is cool. And started doing more of that work. And it got to a point where I wanted to just release music on my own. I didn't want to wait for a film. I didn't want to wait for a short project or a film project. I was like, okay, let me just put out music. And that's where Sodhivine was born. So Sodhivine was just Naanak Sodhi, Sodhivine, putting stuff out that I wanted to put out in the world as just independent music. And fast forward whatever years, and every year I've been putting out some work that inspires me. On the side, I started writing music for TV, Bell Media, which is a company in Toronto,
Mhm.
headquartered in Toronto, writing music there for their stuff while doing the engineering stuff. So just kind of continued down what was interesting. I had a radio show on FM radio in Calgary for 3 years, where I was, playing music for whoever was listening at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays,
What
which
6
was
p.m.
which is a good time slot. So I got to like test out a lot of my tracks. I would just like play the track, not say anything, and see if
That's
anyone
almost a
texted me
peak.
like,
That's almost a peak time slot. That is.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, yeah. Because
Yeah, I
normally,
got lucky because the person that was hosting that radio show, she went on maternity leave, and that radio show had been going for like 20 years. That's why it had such a good slot. And so I got a chance to just test out music. I would play a track that I was working on last night and just wait if somebody texted me on the show, being like, "Hey, what song is that?" Like that's how I knew it was resonating.
a good song. Yeah.
Or if nobody messaged, then it's like, okay, whatever. Like it's probably not.
That's a really interesting approach, to be fair.
Yeah, I miss having that. I miss having that show because it was so clutch.
Was it like a proper
It's
Desi radio or like,
no, it was community radio. So it was the University of Calgary radio station,
wow.
which is one of the older. It's one of the more powerful and community fed radio stations because it's not commercial, right? Like we didn't have ads. It was like an hour is an hour. You were getting an hour of time on the mic. So that way it was really cool.
Straight
And
in the deep end.
yeah, and I don't think I could have gotten away with just playing my own music on like if I was, I don't know, hosting on like BBC or something, right?
Yeah.
Like uh that's a bit more like a tightly run ship,
Yeah.
right? Community radio is like you're almost encouraged to experiment. So yeah, it was fantastic time. But fast forward, kept making music, and now I've just been really inspired by the crossover genre. Like, obviously, my heritage is Punjabi. And so I've been really inspired by this crossover genre between Punjabi inspired, or not even Punjabi, like Indian inspired
Mhm.
sound palettes arranged and presented in a Western way that's like palatable by the Western audience. And so that's just been inspiring for me. So I've been creating a lot of that kind of stuff. And it's found its own audience, I want to say. Like
Mm.
folks um are are listening to this stuff all around the world. And I'm like, wow, because I'm not really marketing it. It's not like I
It
have
is
like
cool
a
music, to be fair. I mean, one thing I gotta say, the mix is so clean. The music always just sounds really clean. So I don't know if you went for that
thank you.
intentionally. So
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. That's what happens when you have so much time writing music for film and TV, and like you have to really be mindful of every sound you put into the mix.
yeah,
Because like film, you cannot do that. Like you cannot have a crappy mix for a film. Like
yeah.
it will get kicked off. The editor will be like, get rid of this.
That's really
So I'm just
interesting how you've kind of got to that process because sometimes you have mixes which are really bass heavy and but they're not clean. It's like a grungy, and I can see how you that wouldn't lend itself to a film.
absolutely not.
Yeah,
Like playing that in a theater would like destroy the theater, right? Because like the bass, like a subwoofer in a theater is it's so different than a PA subwoofer at a
yep,
stage,
yep.
right? So if you suddenly like feed it all this like gunk mud, suddenly your dialogue sounds terrible, everything it sounds like is rattling, like it's just so I had to be very mindful on that. And also, I think coming from an engineering background, I did a lot of so I worked as a systems engineer for almost 4 years. And so a lot of that was like DSP signal processing design. So I almost needed to like apply some of that stuff to production, right? So that's why like I approach it from like more of like a scientific approach.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I've always, yeah, I guess I've just been doing this for so long. After a while, I'm like, okay, this is not gonna work. This is gonna work. I know I've heard this sound like 1,000 times in a car, in a studio, and on stage. This is gonna work. This is not gonna work. But thank you. I'm glad that it's translating.
Hi guys, this is Raj Kaul. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. If you want to support the rest of my music, if you could go and check me out on Spotify or Apple Music and add my songs to your playlists if you like them. Thank you. No, absolutely. I was listening to you music. I was saying, it's just so clean and crisp. It's like you know how like you get the Dolby sound,
Right?
yeah. You know when you think because the bass is not overpowering, but it's still prominent and clean and crisp. And
yeah.
You know when you got your surround system on, your surround sound system, and that thing, you know, that sound like that,
100%, 100%. Yeah. So that like. I could share a little bit about that if you want.
Absolutely, yeah. I love hearing about it because
we can talk a little bit about bass. So bass is interesting because it's if you look at a sound spectrum, if you look at like any kind of spectrum analyzer, right? It's the bass has a lot of space that you can see visually, right? Like frequencies from 20 to 100 hertz take up like a third of the screen, and then or sorry, a little bit less, and then 100 to 1,000 a little bit more compressed, 1,000 to 10,000 is even more compressed, 10,000 to 20,000 is like even more compressed, right? So you have a lot of space to look at the bass, and oftentimes what can happen with bass is it can cause harmonics in the upper range. So if you ever put the sustain pedal on a piano and you hit a low note, it'll lighten up the other notes. But the thing is, in digital recording, that doesn't happen by itself. Because digital recording, I can just put like a sine wave at 50 hertz and it's just a pure sine wave and nothing else is going on. So a lot of times to get the bass to be popping and be really clean, you have to like add those harmonics in onto that bass. So a lot of times with my bass, I'll add some harmonics in the mid lows just to make sure that like the bass is audible without being too overpowering.
Really interesting. That's so cool. I see. I would. Production is not my forte. I'm mainly a singer, right? But I do sort of do drips and drabs of it here and there. I'm trying to get more into it now, so it's actually really interesting that you said that.
Yeah. There's a lot to it, man. Because like, I think people can tell when a mix is well done.
Yeah.
Right. Like even if you're not into music, you can just kind of tell. You're like, okay, yeah, this sounds good. This sounds kind of I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't sound quite there. So getting the mix right is, I think, a really big signal into how professional the recording is, right?
I'm surprised you're not doing more work. Like I know you've done the Nano remix with tips, right?
Yep.
Which is really cool. To be
Thanks,
fair.
man.
Yeah, I'm just surprised you're not doing more stuff. Like with the expertise you've got, there's not many producers who I speak to, and it's not disrespecting other producers,
Right.
but on the technical level that you're describing things, there's not many out there, dude. Honestly, honestly.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's actually really inspirational. To be fair, yeah, I'm your fan now.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love to do more music. I just yeah, like I think being a producer in the modern day, unless you are like full time with like a team, it's hard to get your name out there because there's so many producers, right? And so I would definitely love to do more work. But yeah, like at this point, I'm trying to work on some of my own stuff, releasing that, putting that out there, and hopefully like things like the Nano remix, that stuff, like more of that stuff happens, right? Because that stuff is also like serendipity, right? Like they reached out to me one day and they were like, "Hey, like we like your stuff. Would you want to do this remix?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." Oftentimes I find as producer going the other way is not as successful.
Absolutely.
If you're like, "Hey, tips," if I like went and stood outside their headquarters in Mumbai, they'd probably be like, "Who is this guy?" Like, you know. So I'm working on it.
Interestingly, you might find something. A few years back, I went to Real World Studios. Peter Gabriel's studio. Have you heard of that?
No.
So Peter Peter Gabriel, he's got a studio near Rules to all the major artists in the world would come there, from Beyonce.
Oh
All
wow.
the 80s artists would come there. Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan recorded most of his albums there in the UK.
Wow.
And
Okay.
honestly, they had like a Dolby Atmos studio.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it was just unbelievable. When you finish this interview, make sure you go on Google Rules Studios, because it's the best studio I've ever been to. It's got like
I'll check it
different
out.
rooms and the acoustics and stuff. They show you where this artist recorded, where they show you where, and a lot of it wasn't. A lot of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan's and a lot of the mainstream artists there, they didn't record in the booths. They just recorded in the open space.
Right.
Uh, It was honestly,
That's so cool. Yeah, man, artists at that level, like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan ji, like they are just so, yeah, like acoustics do not matter at that level. Like it's just you're just those folks are so good that
yeah,
they're coming from a different like approach to music as well, right? Where like music is not like sung in a booth by yourself. Like it's like there's almost like a team and you're all
that
like
exactly.
vibing. You're
Yeah,
almost like vibing off all the other singers and instrumentalists, right? It's not like something that you're like, here, go sit in this like silo and sing into this mic. So yeah, that approach is so different. And I find like that's where the power comes from because music is all about like resonating a vibe together and capturing that and trying to maintain that. Like that's what a producer's, dream producer role is. It's like creating a vibe in the studio and capturing that vibe in a way that's like induces that vibe to whoever
Mhm.
listens to it.
Interesting. Recording room. It floats on water, so around it is water.
That's cool.
So the reason why, I think there's a trains track somewhere nearby,
Okay.
so it stopped the vibrations. So
Oh,
it's a
that's
beautiful place.
insane.
It's something like like Lord of the Rings sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Places like that. It's beautiful. It's like in a village somewhere. It's just phenomenal
That's
place.
awesome. So it's in a village. They tried to get away from everything, but they put it next to a train track.
Yeah, or
That's,
something like that. I could be wrong.
that's,
I could be mistaken, but I know that studio is floating, so it stops
that's cool.
vibrations.
That's very cool. That's
Yeah.
super cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, acoustics is it's a whole thing, right? Like you can go crazy in audiophile like stuff. We'll just never, there's no end to it.
No,
But I do think with like modern day tech, we can get away with a lot more dirty
absolutely.
recording, especially with AI. Like
Have you used
there's
AI
so
yet?
much. Have I used AI in my productions? No, but have I used AI just to see what it can do on music? Yeah, it is pretty cool. It's
Mm.
pretty damn cool.
I
It's
haven't
kind of
used it
scary.
yet. I haven't. I need to upgrade my Mac. Uh, yeah, my
Well,
Mac's.
a lot of the stuff is just online, right? So you don't even need a, you can do it on your phone.
Yeah, I've used some stuff AI, but not production wise. No.
Yeah, there's a few that you can just upload a track and they say that you still hold the rights to the track, but I don't know. I feel like it gets fed into the AI engine the moment you upload it. But it'll finish the track for you. So it'll add
Really?
a section to the end of the track for you. And it's pretty fascinating because it'll use elements of the track you uploaded to then create this. Um, yeah, I could easily see producers using that for like inspiration, trying to see like, okay, I like this, I don't like the sound. Um, I do think like I went to this music software conference in Toronto. I think this year, earlier this year, or maybe late last year. And they had all these plugin companies, like Fab Filter was there, all these like Universal Audio was there, like all the big guys were there. And then they had this room kind of a little bit tucked away that was like the AI software room, right? And that software room was almost like there was like a little bit of stigma. Like musicians are like, I don't want to use this. This is gonna like destroy music, whatever. But the presenter that was introducing the rooms, he said something interesting. He's like, make sure you check out the AI room because in the next 5 years, that's where all the innovation is going to be. Like that's what music production is going to turn to. Like it's coming. You might as well get used to it
Might as well
and learn
embrace
it,
it. Yeah.
embrace it. Because if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
Do you know? Have you heard of Swami? DJ
No.
Swami. So Swami was one of the biggest UK Bhangra producers.
Okay.
He produced Apache Indian stuff as well. His early
Oh, no
stuff.
way.
So Arranged Marriage, Don Raja, and all those.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, there were two brothers, Diamond and Simon and Diamond. So I was speaking to him the other day, just the episode before this podcast, right?
Right.
No,
Yep.
two episodes. Yeah, because the next one's coming out. So two episodes before. Check him out. See, he's one of the greatest Indian musicians from the UK ever. He's phenomenal.
Cool.
He's phenomenal. What I mean is phenomenal. He wasn't classically taught rags, but
He
he
just
knew
gets
about
it.
the yeah, he knew about the English scales, and he adapted his style to pick up the rag, even the patterns of the rag. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with how rags work, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So you've got the rag, and the ascent is different, the descent is different. So
Yep, yep,
he
yep.
adapted that, and he adapted it into his own music stuff. Like it's fascinating. But he's big on AI. He's part of this AI board somewhere. I can't remember
Very
exactly
cool.
where it is, but he's really big on AI. So he's
That's
worth
super
checking out.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to check that out. Like I'm um yeah, like I think AI is not going away. So we better learn it
Yeah.
and see how to use it in a responsible, sustainable way. I think the folks that are resisting it are going to be left behind, sadly.
I think they're the purists, aren't they? Like sort of saying, no,
Yeah.
you've got to learn this way, you've got to do this
I
way.
mean, yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think if you're learning as a musician, for sure. I'm talking more about like the production side. Uh,
Yeah.
like we spend so much time vocal comping. I feel like AI is just gonna do that for you in like 2 seconds. Like it'll find the right take, it'll patch it up,
So that's a
boom.
fantastic thing you just said there, bro.
Yeah.
Because I do a lot of vocal comping, but I do slightly different. But I can see how that would be so beneficial to me.
Totally. It's like you just sing it 3 or 4 times, especially if you're a singer first, producer second. Maybe you don't have a producer in the room, you're just self-recording.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's probably an AI tool that's just gonna say, hey, give me 5 takes. I will analyze which one is
Yeah.
the best one.
Because the pitching as well, like sort of the problem I have when I'm recording, right? Say I do 3-4 takes of it. I record slightly different these days, but say I do the takes, it sounds all right to me there. Then it's only later on when you go back to it, think, man, I'm off there, man,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
out of
yeah.
key, and then you have to go
Yeah.
and do it again.
Oh, 100%. It's also kind of like as a singer, I'm sure it's interesting because singing on stage is so much different than singing
Yeah,
in the studio, right?
absolutely, yeah,
And on stage, it's like you can almost kind of be off key a little bit here and there, and it's okay as long as the vibe is right, Like show's all about the vibe. In the studio, man, it's like you are under microscope.
exactly
Like
that, yeah,
every shot is a close up, you know? Like actors are typically like a bit afraid of close-ups because they're like, okay, I have to like be really
yeah.
perfect. The studio, every shot is a close-up. So um yeah, I think AI will help there. It's already really helped in the podcast world, Adobe. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as I've shared with you, like I'm very uh, tech heavy,
Yeah.
right? Given my background and what I do for work and production side. So like, I just find AI is like scary but exciting.
Great topic, yeah. So anyway, let's move on. What about your influence in music, your inspiration? What, you mentioned Bollywood from your dad, right?
Yep.
So was anything else, and how influential is Bollywood in your music anyway?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good question. So I think with any artist, like a lot of the foundational stuff you're exposed to when you're younger tends to like have ripple effects in your creative compass, right? So yeah, growing up, a lot of Bollywood at home, but the Bollywood we were listening to was like it was like the golden era of Bollywood, right? It wasn't like not to say that I feel like every era kind of turns into the golden era after whatever X number of years. It's all nostalgic.
The 80s wasn't. The 80s was rubbish, in my
Fair,
opinion.
fair. But you never know. Like
Yeah.
in 2060, people are gonna be like, the 80s Bollywood was the greatest, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, like, it was a lot of Kishore Kumar. It was a lot of like Muhammad Rafi. It was a
Ah,
lot of like that era, you know, like Manna
unbelievable.
Day, Opie Nayyar, like that kind of stuff. And the thing is, music back in the day, it had to have a certain standard,
Mm,
right? Like of musicality. Otherwise, the audience would just reject it, right? Like to me, a hit song is always a reflection of the audience at the time. So if there's a hit song in the 60s, that's because people largely liked that song. I mean, there's some marketing influences and stuff, right? Of course, like which was marketed more, which wasn't. But in general, it reflects the sentiment of the folks at the time. So, 60s, 70s, that's what it was in like 10, 20-year post-independence India, right? Like
mm,
there was still that, tracks had to be very musical and they had to be very melodious. They could not just be like drums and
yeah,
bass, right? Because largely like people didn't even have like good sound systems. It was like a transistor radio was like tiny, right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
good luck with your drums. Nothing's gonna translate. So that I was really exposed to that kind of stuff. And I think that's where I get my melody sense for what melodies are gonna work, what's not gonna work, because I was so melodious. I also listen to a lot of I don't want to say disco, but like the hits of the West that my parents liked, you know? So we used to listen to a lot of Boney M. I don't know if you've
Okay,
heard
yeah.
of Boney M.
Yeah, I heard
So
about
we,
him.
we heard a lot of Boney M, right? And like Boney M is interesting because it's like disco pop. It's like Euro disco pop. And it kind of combines like so many different things into one because it's disco, it's got a disco beat, it's got like the disco strings, but then it's got this like um the male voice, I forget I think it's Bobby. I forget his name, but like the male voice is like so like raspy and different, right? And then the female voices are like there's three of them, I believe. And so like they're always like harmonizing and stuff, and it's always upbeat. Uh so I listened to a lot of Boney M. And I also listened to a ton of as I got older, started listening to a lot of like what was called at the time techno, but it's really just dance, electronic dance, and big beat. I don't know if you heard of big beat, the genre.
I haven't, no. Heard it-
Big beat is a cool genre. Like, um, do you know like Fatboy Slim,
Yeah,
Rockefeller
yeah, yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's big beat.
Oh, okay. I've been listening to it and I
So
didn't know what it's called.
yeah, yeah.
I just
Like
class that as, yeah, so
it's
current.
like a classic record, right? And
Yeah.
even like uh Crystal Method. I don't know if you're the Crystal Method, Prodigy, those kind of
I used to love Prodigy when I was a kid.
right? Yeah, 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 yeah. I remember I went to the library in grade 4 and I got this like CD, music CD. I signed out this music CD, which was like a Digimon soundtrack, like some like cartoon soundtrack, and it had a Rockefeller saying as one of the tracks. And I just remember like listening to that song 1,000 times. I'm like, man, this song is so cool because it had these like sampled beats, but then it had like live guitar and it had like sampled like vocals almost, like not the singing vocals, but like just spoken vocals, right? Sample like the funk soul brother, check it out now, like, and then it like comes back again and
What
again.
a track.
And I'm like, man, like, how did you make like what is this? Like, what even is this, right? Um, and so a lot of that I think influenced me, which was this like melodies and musicality on the Indian side, on the Bollywood side, with like some of these legendary records that were all taken in like one shot in some studio in Bombay in the 60s. This disco vibe, European disco vibe, and then this like electronic sampled um like big beat style. And that's like more foundational. And then as I grew up, obviously like big into hip hop. like hip hop was huge in North America, right? Like we're talking 50 Cent, dance hall, like Sean Paul, that stuff is huge. So just listening to a lot more like the centric stuff, the mainstream stuff. And so if you listen to my music today, I think I like subconsciously bring those influences in,
Mhm.
right? Like a lot of my like the Bossery melodies on some of my tracks, like they're more of that older Bollywood style, right? But then I'll often like sample people's spoken word. Like I sampled like Ravi Shankar when he was uh introing a tabla at stage at a concert in London. Like I sampled him talking about what a tabla is, and I put that on Tabla Flex, right? So like a lot of
Sick
that
track, though,
like
by the way. Sick track.
thanks, Ed. Thanks, Ed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I sampled a commercial. There's like a tea commercial with Zakir Hussain, and there's a tea commercial in India that was like, "Wah, Ustad, wah," talking about like Taj Mahal chai. Like sample that, right?
Mhm.
Because I was like in the commercial, he's like doing a tabla solo, and then the lady is like, "Wow, Ustad, wah." So like just sampling that kind of stuff. That's like the more big beat influence, right? Um, and then like the groovy basses and the groovy like rhythms and stuff, like that's coming from that Boney M vibe, right? So it's a pretty eclectic thing. I don't know if this is like a common palette for producers. I feel like a lot of producers are like, yeah, I grew up listening to rock, so like classic rock, and then went into like punk rock, and then now I produce pop. Like, for me, it's like Opie Nair and like Mohamed Rafi mixed with Boney M, mixed with like Fatboy Slim
You know,
and Jay-Z.
you're a man after my own heart, honestly, because what you've just described is how I identify myself with music. Is in the sense of that I love melody, but it has to be modernized to the uh,
Yeah,
modern audience.
totally.
Because I'm look sort of 60s, 70s, as you said, like, and also 90s, Kumar Sanu, Udit Narayan, all those
Yes.
songs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that's
yeah.
my era, and Gurdas Man, and if you
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
the key thing about that era and all the eras we just talked about was melody. It was
Yes.
just so melodious, which I
Because
find
it
missing these
had to
days.
be. Exactly, because it had to be. Like, I wasn't just joking about like music reproduction limitations as a driver for sound. Because if you have a tiny transistor radio all over
Hmm.
India, the only thing that's gonna stick is a melody and lyrics.
Mm,
Like that's why these tracks had like barely any music, and the music they had was like one instrument kind of right in the front
that's
a lot of the
amazing.
times. Right? Because that's all you could hear.
Yeah.
You couldn't hear like the whatever stuff in the back. You just couldn't. And nobody had headphones. Nobody had like a big studio.
Hi guys, this is Raj Kaul. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. If you want to support the rest of my music, if you could go and check me out on Spotify, on Apple Music, and add my songs to your playlist if you like them. Thank you. It's a bit like today in India, where I suppose this is the other side of it. Most music's listened to you on your smartphone now, isn't it? Just like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, 100%. So
and you
like
have to adapt it to that.
what's gonna stick? It's not gonna be like a bass line usually.
Yeah,
It's gonna be like lyrics, vocal, style, and melody. That's what's gonna come through.
yeah. Really interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
It's
I
almost
love
like
it.
you almost got to think of like how is this being consumed, right? And that's where the product management mindset comes in because that's what I'm trying to do at Google. Like, how is this feature being consumed? Who is actually using this? How are they using it? What are they doing with it? Apply the same mindset to music, it's suddenly so much bigger than your studio, right?
Yeah.
If folks in India are listening to this track on a bicycle on the phone speaker, like, do they care about like the bass wobbling?
No.
No. No. Like they care about like feeling cool. Like, that's why I think like Honey Sing, a lot of Honey Sing stuff like hits because at the start it's like, yo yo honey sing good, like
Exactly.
everybody's like, okay, like I feel like let's this is cool, right? You know, like you almost don't even need music in that. You just
Well, Dalera Vanguni.
yeah,
There's a hook, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, exactly. It's like, yo, like you could just play that
Yeah.
on a tadi, like a tadi beat, and it would hit. Like, you know?
That's really interesting, bro. Honestly. Oh, cool, man. So let's move on. I could talk to you for ages, by the way. I'm just
Yeah, yeah,
it's
of course, of course. Yeah, we
pretty
should
awesome.
keep talking. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, pretty
We'll we'll
awesome.
we'll, we'll keep it
Um,
going,
what
but
about uh, you know, you mentioned sort of your favorite genres and influences at the moment. So let's move on from that. What about your work with Bell Media? Tell us a bit about that and how you
yeah,
got into that and the difference as well from your production and that. We sort of touched on it earlier as well, but so love to hear about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, so the Bell Media work it's kind of like it's basically production music. So Bell Media is like a big TV company. They have 63 channels, TV channels, TV stations. And if you think about that, 63 TV stations means every hour they need 63 hours of content. So
Wow.
every day they need like thousands of hours of content, right? So they're massive. They're just producing content all the time. They're choosing content all the time. They're putting it up, et cetera, et cetera. And they have their own uh music team essentially, and they have their own music library that they pull music from
Yeah.
to produce this content very quickly. Like think about it. If they're like, okay, we recorded a news broadcast today, we need music for it like now in like 5 minutes because it's gonna go on air, right? Or hey, we did like a breakfast show. There's like this sequence where this person brings this thing into the room. We need music for it like now. They're not gonna have time to like go um source a producer, give him a cue sheet, blah 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 blah. No, they're gonna pull from their library and they're just gonna use it, right? So to feed that library, there's a team of producers. I think there's like 15, 20 of us.
Mhm.
Uh, and we write music to feed that library. And
Right.
so I've probably done like 50 tracks for them, I want to say. And
Wow.
it's just different tracks of different flavors. Like I did a full like Indian package for them, which was around like Diwali time. Like if they wanted to use any Indian music and like during Diwali or Bandi Chhod Divas or Holi, Lohri, like any of the big Baisakhi, any of the big like Indian Punjabi festivals.
Festivals, yeah.
Uh, so like I delivered a package for them. It was like 20 tracks around just every track was like Indian, but it was a different vibe. Um, they're not like it's like building blocks of music, right?
Mm.
So they'll be like section A, B, C. The editors can like chop it around how they like. There's an intro and an outro. Um, and it was really cool because I got to basically just like think of it like a sparring. Like if you're a boxer, like the real battle will be like going to like a MMA fight. This was more like sparring. So it's just like practicing. Uh, sorry, one second. I think my camera's lagging. Give me just try to fix this a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see the lag.
Oh,
It's all right.
I don't know
No
what's going
problem.
on with my camera. But anyway, uh yeah, so super fun. I had a blast doing it. I still do it sometimes from time to time. But my focus right now is more around creating great work for Sodhivine, like releasing it under Sodhivine. Uh, and that's taken a lot of reflection. I want to make sure I'm delivering quality, but it's also like trying to figure out social media and trying to figure out, okay, like how's it going to get out there and actually be consumed. Um, and as you know, man, as for an artist, it's an ever moving target because culture is ever moving,
Mm.
right?
I think the
Culture is
hardest,
always,
I think the hardest thing for me as a musician, and I don't know whether you can relate with this, is not doing the music, producing the music, so it's getting it out to the people, getting to the
yeah,
right people at the right time. And that's just it's selling. How do you sell your music, basically?
yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. It's well, like my approach to this is like the music firstly the music needs to have something about it, right? Like the music itself needs to be of a certain quality I don't want to say good because good is subjective. The music needs to have a quality that appeals to a certain audience.
Hmm.
Let's just leave it at that, right? So that's like a table stakes. You need to do that. That's required almost, right?
Mm.
Now with the marketing side, I find like you can strategize it all you want, but in reality, you just have to try a bunch of different approaches until you find one that like works.
It's
So like some artists will be like, okay, my strategy for the next 3 months is I'm just doing short form video. And the next 3 months I'm going to do long form video. The next 3 months I'm going to do Instagram ads. The next 3 months I'm going to do Facebook ads. It's like, or you could do each one of those for 2 days, find the one that works the best, and then do that one for a week,
mm,
and then find the area in that one that works the best, and then do that one for a week. Like, you almost have to like think of yourself as an entrepreneur and making like really tiny
adjustments.
MVPs. Like, like, here, I'm gonna try this short form video idea. Okay, this totally bombed. All right, let me not do that. Let me try this other short form idea. Maybe like evolve it a little bit. Oh, this one got like more to it. So that in itself is a whole thing, you know? And oftentimes it's frustrating because artists like we're not marketers.
No,
Like we like to make music. We're not trying to like be like the next marketing power.
mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Unfortunately, you have to learn it, don't you? These days,
Yep, you do have to learn it.
yeah, you need to know a
Yeah,
little
you do
bit
have
about
to.
it.
Or like I would even say like you cannot. I think some people think that you can outsource this
Mhm.
and just get somebody to do it for you. I don't think that's true. I think the real marketing has to be led by the artist vision. Like,
I agree. I agree.
you
Because
know, like
when I first got back into music, and Naanak was I remember I went to a marketing agency to market my music, and quoted me an astronomical price for it.
okay,
One
okay.
astronomical price, and number two, it was just the astronomical price. All they were going to do is pitch it to some radio stations.
Yeah.
So I asked them, I
Exactly.
said, "Well, what's your yeah? You might be a marketing media company, but what's your strategy? What are you going to do with the song? Oh, we're going to give it to this radio station. I can do that myself."
Yeah, probably. And the pitch will probably be a little bit more like higher quality if it's coming from the artist, right?
Yeah. So yeah,
Uh,
it's
so
I agree with you. Yeah, it's got to be
yeah,
led by the artist.
I do think, and I said this earlier too, like people are not stupid. Like people know.
Yeah.
Like our brains are so like the audience is not dumb. They know when it's a legit thing and they know when it's you trying to sell something, right? And think about it. Like you go on Instagram Reels for 20 minutes, you've probably seen like 100 ads, or maybe not 100, but you've seen a lot of ads. So your brain is tuned to know in a microsecond if this is an ad, if something's trying to sell something or not.
Mm,
So the moment you go on and you're like selling, even if it's not an ad, you're gonna get skipped immediately, right? Sorry, when I said is even though it's not an ad, even though it's not a paid Instagram ad, even if it's just a video of you trying to sell, folks will know immediately.
mm.
Like our brains are so attuned, so this is gonna skip, skip. So you have to like legitimately be delivering something that is like entertaining that people will actually want to see, not just like, yo, check out my new track. Like I can work once in a while, but that's not the like Charlie XCX is not doing that, you know?
That's really cool. So let's move on to the next part. Was your what's your creative process like? Your
Yeah,
typical workflow when you're doing the track?
yeah. No, that's a good question. Honestly, it's pretty eclectic. Um, I start with an idea in my head. I try to bring it to life. Like I'll have an idea, like walking around the city or like in the shower or something, and I'll try to get it into a voice memo. and I'll just talk to myself, be like, okay, this is how I see the bass going, this is how I see the thing going, okay, and then this section, that section, blah blah blah. I'll try to record that. That works sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, Other times, what I have to do is I have to like get inspiration from a sample or some kind of like
Hmm.
musical idea. So like I'll try to find a sample that I'm like, okay, this is really cool. I could use this. Or a musical idea that I'll play on the keyboard. I'll be like, oh yeah, like that chord progression is really cool, or that sound is really cool. Like the timbre of that sound is really interesting. It's like that can also be the start of a of an approach. Um, but once you kind of have that spark, I think the objective is to like keep that spark lit. Because it's so easy to just get stuck in a rut and be like, okay, I'm just gonna work on drums for the next 30 minutes, and then you've lost track of like any inspiring parts of the track. You're just like, I've heard 1,000 kick drums. What was the idea again? Like, what are we making? It's like all I know is kick drums now.
Hmm.
So you almost need to like, once you have the, I should talk in first person. Once I had the technical skills on how to create a record, I then almost had to like take myself out and just put the foundational pillars in and just say like bass like this, structure is like this, vocals are like this, melodies like this. Okay. Does this add a, like almost like sketching a painting first? Is this even good? Or is this like crappy? And once you know it's good, maybe taking a step back, then you start going in and start doing the details. Then you start to like really polish it all up.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes the sketch itself is incredible. And you're like, holy crap, like this is already so good. The moment I polish this is going to be even better.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like that, the process is really, that's ideally what happens. Um, Sometimes I just get like way too far into it and I'll have this like incredible intro section that sounds super good. And then the rest of the track is like garbage. And I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty top heavy. Or like vice versa, like intro's terrible and like the chorus is incredible. Um, but I will say, like, last thing I'll say on this is the faster you can do it, the better usually.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because it's like one cohesive idea rather than like a
Hmm.
thousand ideas.
Hmm.
And so like some of my records, like Sitar Flex,
Awesome.
that record was made in my grad school dorm, well, not dorm room, but like my apartment in grad school where I did not have a studio. Um, it was made in like 30 minutes because
Really?
yeah, because I had these other three tracks on the EP and I was like, these are pretty good, but like he's like an intro song. Like, and a three-track EP is kind of like weird number. So let me just make another song. I'm like, okay, let's make it a long intro because I want it to be an intro to the EP. And then yeah, let's put a big drop in there. Cool. All right, nice. This sounds cool. Bring it back. Another drop. Okay, cool. Nice. Let's vary the second drop. Cool, done.
Mm.
And it worked. And it was like people like messaged me about that song all the time. They're like, dude, how did you do this? I was like, dude, it was just like a sprint, honestly.
Gosh, 30
Uh,
minutes.
yeah, yeah.
You should put your
Anyway,
challenges like you produce a track in 1 hour or 30 minutes or something and see it.
yeah, yeah. You know, like I would love to do that. Like I think I would love to film myself for an hour with a camera that's not this laggy
Yeah.
and 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 like send it to some editor and be like, hey, look, I made this beat in an hour. Can you like compress this into a minute and find all like the juicy elements of the production, compress it into a minute?
That's a great
Um,
idea. I'm nicking that for me.
go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm listening to
If you find a
That's
good
actually a
editor,
great
let me
idea, though,
know.
to be fair.
If you find a good editor, let me know.
Yeah.
Um,
My wife does my editing, so it's all
okay,
in
there
house.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go. There you
She'll do the
go.
editing.
There you go.
So,
Well, hey man, it's yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting with you and talking about music. It's been a blast.
absolutely. Before you go, I know we're taking up
Uh,
time. The podcast is about musical excellence. What advice would you give to the audience and how to pursue
oh man.
musical excellence?
I think the the best advice is the simplest advice. I think the best advice is advice that you can apply immediately.
Mhm.
So my advice is going to be very simple. You have to, you just have to do music.
Mhm.
Just do music. Don't think, don't analyze, don't strategize, don't watch, don't sit on the side. Get on the field and just make music. There's a reason my band teacher said to me, he said this to me when I was younger. He's like, Naanak, we play music. Okay. We play music. It's called playing music because it's play. It's fun.
Mhm.
If you're not playing, you're not doing music. So my advice to excellence is just do music, play music, get hours in making music. That's it. Don't worry about this like strategy, music industry, tech stuff, buying the right plugin, doing the right thing, blah, 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 blah. None of that matters. Just get in the music, into the out of your head, into the thing. You know, Kanye West did 3 beats a day for 5 beats a day for 3 summers or something. He's like very proud of that. Like, do that. Do 5 beats a day for 3 summers. You'll come out of that and you'll be incredible. I promise.
Awesome. Okay, so thanks for that. Where can listeners find your work, and where can we catch up with you? Just let everyone
So
know
you
your
can find
social.
me, you can find me on social media, Sodhivine. I have the Sodhivine handle on basically all social media, which I'm really lucky. So that's my last name, Sodhivine, Sodhivine. You can also find me on sodavine.com. You can email me at info@sodavine.com. Uh, Spotify, Apple Music.
Absolutely, yeah.
Please go check it out. And the one thing I do love is when folks reach out to me and they say, "Hey, I love this track." And then they tell me about how they found it or how they liked it or what they think of it. That's to me is like chef's kiss. Like, great, this person liked it enough to actually reach out to me. Amazing, amazing. And you can also sign up for my newsletter on my website. So if you give me your email, then I'll send you any new tracks that come out straight to your email.
I'll do that now as well, right after
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do it up. Do it up. Yes,
So,
yes.
guys, this was the Raj Kaul Podcast. This was So Divine. Make sure you check him out, and please leave a review. If you see it on social media, this clip, make sure you go and follow it. Follow So Divine on his socials, and if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you check him out as well. And please leave a review, drop a comment. So I'm going to stop on this, and I'll just resume the conversation just behind the scenes for a minute or so because I've taken a
Sounds
lot of this
good.
time. So bless
No,
you
no.
all, and see you next time.